We're live. We're live already. Oh boy.
What's going on, everybody? We are live. Robert, it's the last day of August. It's 8:31. It's Thursday, and you are watching the Daily AI Show live. Today we got the whole crew with us, which is fantastic. Second day in a row where we've got all 7 on the screen, which is awesome. And today I think we're all equally excited, or maybe not equally, but we're all excited to talk about this topic, which is generally just AI in education. What is currently going on? What are we aware of in our lives? Some of us have kids, some of us don't, but even if not, where is it as far as post-secondary education? Who are the major players? All of the above is sort of what's on the docket for today. So I have a few companies that I think are pretty cool. I'm happy to share those and talk about them, but does anybody have like a hot button they want to jump on this right away, or we can just open it up?
I'll start just by saying, let's provide some, framework for the discussion. There's AI for teachers to assist them in delivering their work. There's AI for students, and they're already adopting ChatGPT in many ways, as we know. There's some issues around that could be discussed. And then there's this whole field, I think, called intelligent tutors. Khan Academy and Khanmigo Bot is a very interesting new direction for that. So let's talk about all those.
And there's one more category, which is the ethics behind it, or the policies behind use and non-use, and the arguments or the camps that each side are on, which is interesting, right? So use cases, but also the policy about using them in education.
Yeah.
I also want to jump in and say there is also use case for the support system. So administration and just getting students to where they need to go to.
Yeah, and I think Carl, even you mentioned yesterday, but I think it was after the call, after the show. By the way, guys, sometimes we think some of the most amazing stuff happens after we hit and record, and so we've always said we need to have a show after show. So we'll maybe someday we'll do that. But Carl, I remember you saying like, man, like we were talking about getting excited for today in education. You're like, I think this is going to have to be broken up into multiple segments, and that may be the case. I think just what you just said, Andy, alone, we're probably talking about 3 or 4 or 5 different 30-minute discussions on this. But maybe today what we can do is we can just like crack the door open just a little bit, and then in future shows we can certainly dive in to different areas to it. So I don't know, maybe one of the best.
Jump in with a quick one to get started.
Yeah, please.
So I just I suppose when you start to talk about students using AI, for example, there's lots of this, it's cheating and all that sort of stuff. But I'm old enough to remember going to school when you weren't allowed to use a calculator in your mathematics exams in like high school and probably primary school. And then you got to the point where people would start using calculators, and then we had scientific calculators and programmable calculators. And I'm too old now. I don't know what they do nowadays. But at some stage, everyone said calculators are terrible. It will destroy people's minds. They won't be able to do maths anymore, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we've gone past that. I suspect to some extent that may be how the whole AI in education thing may go over time.
Well, let me also say that the AI is disrupting employment broadly. And so education has to reset in response to AI's intrusion, if you will. And then that says, okay, well, what's the value of going to a college anymore if I can access the world's knowledge conversationally with an AI chatbot? And I really need to be working in that domain in order to move forward. How does education as an institution across all the different levels of education, how does it respond to that? And shouldn't AI be central to all of that? Yes, it's going to get adopted. It's not going to be as simple as it's another tool in the classroom.
Just one thing too that it's a very small rant of mine. The past, I don't know how many years, decades, we've been teaching students, primary, secondary, post-secondary, from an industrial revolution type teaching method, right? So to be able to, we haven't switched. Like students still all congregate together, for the most part, memorize certain things, and then regurgitate that whatever they were taught in some sort of test or whatever. I think with AI today, the number one thing I think every student should start learning would be critical thinking and understanding when I'm using said AI tool, because there's no getting around it. You can ban it. It doesn't matter. This will come out. What is real? What is fake? When I see an output, human or not, can I critically think through this? And in addition to critically think through this, can I provide my own opinion in a coherent manner? And that's where I think the AI education piece is going to be important, because you've all said it. Oh, we may ban it, we may not. But I'm like, instead of banning, why are we not teaching people how to use it? And that is the shaking foundation of education.
Yeah, but let's talk about the elephant in the room with the use of AI. And just to give you some context, I'm looking at the secondary education, the college level. I'm currently working with the University of Tennessee's new College of Emerging and Collaborative Studies. They're creating their first of its kind, at least at the UT level, which is why I'm wearing my UT brand today. AI undergrad degree, and the college is overall program is designed for other, like if you're a biology student or if you're a poli-sci student, you can take classes in this college because it's like taking a typing class, not necessarily related to your major or minor, but it gives you an underlying skill set, right? So that's their focus. But going back to my point, the elephant in the room is they asked me this question as I was talking to some of the leaders and the professors, if you allow the students to use the software and the AI and the different tools, you still have to have a way to test that they're actually absorbing the knowledge that you're trying to teach them. So whatever the course, there's the technology piece, you're teaching them how to use the technology. But if they're using the technology to double down or upscale their output, like their papers are tons better, which is great, but then you have to find a way, you have to have a way to test them on their ability to absorb that regurgitated content that you say it that way. I see it just understanding and knowledge and principles and concepts. And so that's what college is designed to do. My daughter goes to a classical education format, which is they go rhetoric, and then they go through different stages where you're actually producing the content. First, you learn the basics, then you learn how to think, right? So in the college level, we really have to find a way that how are they using AI, and then how can we somehow figure out how to test them on the knowledge base? That's where I think the biggest challenge is going to be. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I think you. Go ahead, Beth.
I don't have kids. I have friends who are teachers. And I came up during a time when you paid somebody to type your paper, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we were laughing that what's going to happen now is you're paying someone to handwrite your typed paper, right? Because handwritten papers are going to become a thing, and blue book tests where you're like doing that kind of essay stuff. But that proves that someone has written it themselves, but it doesn't actually get to their ability to use the information or the skills that they developed or any of those things that you want them to have when they leave college, right?
Well, so I think that's kind of like, sounds like to me, just listening to y'all, it's what you're hitting around, which is, Carl, you're saying, look, it's like, I agree with you. The idea of banning it is ridiculous. And in fact, Anne Murray was here. She was talking about this. I remember her writing a post about this. Thanks, Anne, for putting this in, because I'll put a couple of them on here. But she's talking about this, I think, in a LinkedIn post, and was talking about this video that somebody did. But basically, you have this college professor that's saying they don't care about their success, and that there'd be natural consequences. I don't even know what that means, but and then she was talking about how one of the children had a video of this, and she's like, meanwhile, U of M is giving everybody the tools. Now, I will tell you, one of the people, thank you, Anne, by the way. And if you're not checking out Anne here, I'll put her name back up too, because if you're not checking out what Anne's doing on LinkedIn, I highly recommend you go and check her out for sure. one of the early people I saw, probably January or something, maybe even a little bit earlier on TikTok, was this teacher. I wish I could remember her name because I loved her videos, but she was a high school teacher and she was an early adopter of using AI. And what I loved was, it was kind of in what you were saying, Carl, about critical thinking skills, which I 1,000% agree with. That's where the real effort should be. And so she said, look, it makes no sense to say, by the way, there's this amazing tool, there's this new calculator, and it does math for you. In this case, it's amazing writing tool, and it will write probably better than you can this amazing paper. Okay, now what? It exists. Poof, it exists. We can't do this and say that this tool no longer exists. She's like, so how are we going to do this differently? So what she decided to do in her class, and this was early, I mean, we're talking about, well, early 2023, so it's still early as far as all this coming out with ChatGPT. And so what she would do is she would say, give me a topic to her class. And I'm paraphrasing here, so I hope I don't mess this up too bad, but they would give him a topic. She would go home to ChatGPT, input the topic into ChatGPT with a prompt, and it would produce a essay. She would bring the essays back to class and say, this is what ChatGPT created for you. Go on in there, use your critical thinking skills, and tell me where it should be corrected. Tell me where it should be adjusted, where you feel like you could add in more of your experience to it, and write your notes down and whatever. I will take all of this back. She went back home and made the edits and brought it back and reiterated the system. And what I believe that she was doing was she was saying, here's this amazing tool. And instead of running the other way from it, I'm going to use it to teach my kids how to be better critical thinkers. And I was so floored and so amazed by her willingness to just accept something that she saw coming. And as a teacher, it was obvious to her that this was going to be something that was going to be a huge, huge part of the future of education. And she immediately started thinking about, how do I make this to help kids learn more? How do I make this so the kids have better chances and all this stuff? I thought, that's teaching, to your point, Beth, that's teaching children how to be prepared for the future, not covering our eyes and say, pretend it doesn't exist. Or the professor saying,
Brian, as brilliant as that sounds, the first thing that jumps out that brilliant example is equity in education. That's a shining star of a teacher. But oh my gosh, how many educators, how many teachers and professors aren't going to take that leap, aren't going to learn themselves enough to do that? Oh. Then there's going to be all these students that missed out on that particular method. And I love that.
I 1,000% agree. I think that's why, I mean, Anne mentioned somebody else too from the AI, actually George R., who I'm not sure who that is, but I will mention Amanda Bickerstaff. Amanda Bickerstaff, who I'm going to be doing an interview as part of the Daily AI show coming up, hopefully in like the next week. She started a company called AI for Education. Another person that you guys should definitely go check out if you're not on LinkedIn. She's putting out amazing content. She's an educator herself, a former teacher, a current teacher. And so she's like, hey, educators need to understand how to use these tools. And I agree with you, Robert. Like, you're right. If we're not careful, and what this teacher, by the way, did was she took out the element of you have a computer that's capable of doing this at home, because as we know through COVID, so many students got left behind because they didn't have the resources at home, the proper level of, internet or whatever the case is, in order to be able to stay where the other children. And so you had this huge gap in education levels as we have right now, but it became even worse. So what I loved about her,
what was the person you said AI for Education? What was her name?
Her name's Amanda Bickerstaff, Bickerstaff. It's Bickerstaff. And
so just quickly, Brian, I can't remember if it was Carl or Andy who said this. I think for me, I love the idea of what she did. I think what it introduces for me is that is a really good way to get people to start thinking critically. It's embracing the tools, but it's literally forcing them to do that. So we've got the answer, quote unquote, from ChatGPT or its future cousin. That's great, but what do we do with it? How do we learn something valuable from it? And I think if we move education beyond the memorizing and regurgitating into more, certainly critical thinking skills, which we all agree, I think is going to be vital moving forward. It's already vital now, but we're not getting to stop being taught. I think that's a really good way to approach it. And I think that's going to get a better result. And if it proves to be worked, that's the kind of thing that, education departments can start literally rolling out across all of their teachers. I've got multiple teachers in my family, so I'm familiar with. In fact, I've even been taught by a relative, which is a bit weird. you can force that out into the marketplace. And, we already currently have teachers that don't do a great job anyway. ChatGPT is not going to change that around, so even if they're not willing to learn it.
But it might make them a better teacher.
It might do,
So I have a thought about this, and I'm going to play Andy a little bit, because I think what we're hinting at is a shift in a paradigm. Because AI is changing so quickly, that we're moving into a more collaborative, and that I'll be upfront, this is like sort of the core of my consulting vision. We're moving into a more collaborative, like, let's learn together kind of situation, so that the teacher doesn't have to be the expert, which would be one of those things, Robert, that holds people back, right? Like, I don't want to spend the next whatever trying to do this. There was a teacher that I saw, Brian, that did a similar kind of thing, except that their school allowed them to have computers, and so using ChatGPT in the class was a possibility. Maybe they were the computer teacher, but they were asked to create a series of prompts, right, to like systemize what you needed to do in order to get this relationship with ChatGPT, and they collaborated on it, right? Like, how was your thing? Okay, so this person added this thing, and as a class, they came together and learned, right? Which is a hell of a skill.
Oh my God. Yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, learning how to work with people and have disagreements and, by the way all of life works.
Boys will never go for it.
So there's still the need.
And the teacher was just like the teacher was the facilitator of the learning process.
Yeah.
Regardless of the delivery method, there is a need, as Robert was pointing out, to assess the acquisition of knowledge and critical thinking skills and try to do that. Well, one of the ways that I'm just imagining that might happen in the future is if you have an intelligent tutor that you're interacting with on a daily basis, frequently, that AI is simultaneously capable of evaluating the kinds of inputs that you're providing to it in response, either to queries that it's giving you, or questions that you're asking. Are they related to the subject, or is this really requiring a whole lot of prompting on my part as the AI in order to keep the conversation going? Am I engaging intellectually with this person? The AI can assess that and record it, so that you might not need to do a final test. In effect, you would just go and the AI would summarize the entire Aristotelian dialogue that had happened between the AI and the user.
Well, now you're getting into dangerous territory, Andy. Are you talking about replacing teachers? I know you're not, but that's the first thing I go to is like, well, Khan Academy and Kanigo, you just put them in a computer screen and have the bot teach and then query its knowledge, like you just said, which is brilliant. And you can do a summary over the course of 10 weeks. Does this kid know what this topic is and what is his level of competency of this topic? That's brilliant, but you're taking the teacher out of the loop completely, it seems.
Not completely, because I think there would still be regular classroom for socialization and for collaboration and engagement and understanding what the different responses of individuals are to their interactions with the AI teaching. So I have a kind of a utopian vision of how all that works in the future, but there are pessimists too. Go.
No, I don't want to say pushback. I think this is Robert's thing, but like I want to. No, I absolutely do not believe teachers are in danger. If anything, we need teachers now more than ever with AI. And my reason for that is, my friend in long-term, I've known him for several years, Evan Erberg. He runs the company Proximity Learning, and they do live virtual teaching. So if you can imagine, you have schools around the country who have never been able to, or have not been able to get a Spanish teacher for 3 years in their school for all sorts of reasons, where they are low, the economic situation, whatever the case is. And they put a virtual teacher who's there every day, but they are on a screen. And then there's also somebody in the classroom. And one of the things he's an expert in education. One of the things he always tells me is like, we saw it during COVID one of the things children, and I'm talking about younger children, obviously through developmental years, but even through middle school where my daughter is now, it is very, very important for these children to have the student teacher interaction. It is, in my mind, as a parent of a 12-year-old, critical to my daughter's growth skills. However, something like a Khanmigo, yeah, I think it's pretty damn cool that my daughter, to your point, Andy, could be having a conversation with Khanmigo in math, and the damn system knows when she gets to cultural events and civics that happened. It has a memory of that, and it brings it back up to her to help her bridge the gap between the two. So now the math teacher doesn't need to have every conversation with the civics teacher because that's not happening anyway in middle school. But now you have this extra tool that these facilitators, which I think is a better name for it, can then say, well, let's go ahead. Let's have that conversation. That's fantastic. Let's make the connection. If my daughter happens to do very good in math, but other subjects aren't her spotlights. Okay. So I think it's really cool that you're going to have these tools that go across the whole system and are able to pull up conversations into it. And anyway, I'm very excited about that.
But and I want to. Here's my pushback, because I guess I definitely feel like, and no offense there, Brian, but you're a tad naive, or it's almost as if like you're singing the praises. Hold on, you're singing the praises of a technology without recognizing the end state of that technology, the end state of it. And to think about it this way, as a current state use case, homeschoolers would absolutely love this particular technology. Plug them into Khan Academy or Khanmigo or a version of it that teaches them everything, and they're going to be smarter than any student in high school and any of the other students that are taught them, just because they're already
smarter or more socially
efficient.
Adept. That's my pushback on that.
You're missing the opportunity. Homeschoolers are actually quite socially adept because they actually have more time to socialize outside of a classroom.
Yeah, I mean, these parents are doing homeschool and stuff like that, bust their butts to make sure these kids are part of social groups and sports.
Right.
And all. Yeah,
but they only do like 2 hours of school a day. Like their school is actually very, very short.
So my point to a guy who had my daughter in first grade. We lived in Europe. She was in virtual school the whole time. 90% of our days was go out and exploring new playgrounds because she was 7 at that time, and that was really important. Or we took tours to go explore graffiti art on the walls of Berlin.
That's my point. My point is that the technology we're talking about today that's allowing all this to happen is 100% pointing a target on teachers' backs.
No,
they're going to be gone in the future.
It's not.
100%.
Come on. Hang on. You're not eliminating teachers. What
I'm
you're
not talking
doing
about
is you're giving them tools.
I'm talking about in the future. It'll be eliminated. It'll be so much more sophisticated. You'll have a virtual teacher, and she'll be able to teach kids on all different levels. It'll start with the homeschool community, and
unless you're building a robot that gives really good hugs, you can't convince me that.
I want to add another dimension to this, which is right now schools do a lot of daycare. Okay, so how do you replace that in the overall societal structure? There's so many things.
There'll still be a room for them to go, but it won't be a human teaching them. I know. I agree with you, Brian, that that's exactly what we need to do to our children. And it's valuable. Unfortunately, I recognize that there's bigger forces pushing this agenda that's going to make our children not benefit the way we did as kids.
If that worked, social media would not be directly responsible for increased suicide rates. We know for a fact that we have more people that are more lonely and feel disconnected, despite the fact that we have tools that connect them more than ever before. Yeah, we know this is a human condition.
You're making the case that this is a very touchy and there's societal damage by doing this route. I agree with you 100%, but I'm also recognizing it's a freight train that we can't stop. It's like AGI. We're not going to be able to stop it. When it actually happens, I don't know, but the genie's out of the bottle in education and AI usage. And unfortunately, our children are already suffering because of social media. We're already suffering because of these things that you're mentioning. And I agree, but unfortunately, the genie's out of the bottle. That's my
speaking of genies.
The reality is that AI is going to put a lot of people out of job anyway. Teachers are just probably going to be one of those categories that eventually it may happen to. I don't like it. I don't think any of us like it or are positive about it, but I think it's a reality that will happen at some stage for a lot of occupations.
I want to share a tool now for our listeners that just hit the newsletters yesterday, and I tried it this morning, and I'm amazed. So this is in the stream of advancement of intelligent tutors, and it's called Bloombot. And I encourage you to try it. Bloombot is very impressive in terms of its ability to tutor you in any domain of knowledge that you like. I just practiced with one little thing. I asked it for, okay, what's the range of topics that we might be discussing around this? Boom, it lays out a beautiful taxonomy of all the different elements of that particular subject area. And it was nicely conversational on a level, I think, with Pi. So Pi is another sort of a personal tutor kind of thing. You can ask it to teach you things, and it's conversational, and it's also enabled with voice in their mobile app. So you don't have to type. But Bloombot, and specifically on the web, chat.bloombot.ai is the one. You should go and just try it out to see where this is leading.
So I have, I've been following a tool parallel to Bloom, which is Learn XYZ. And this came out. And in addition, now the two tools have, I believe, the same end goal, but this tool creates courses for you. So you type in whatever you want to learn, and it'll give you beginner, intermediate, advanced level courses on pretty much whatever you want to learn.
What's the name of that tool, Carl?
It's Learn XYZ. Learn.xyz.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think and so what's fascinating about Bloom, what's fascinating about that is the people who love to learn, who love to continuously learn, there are new avenues to be able to do this that I think, because for me, I love continuous learning. So this is the type of stuff I just eat up because I always want to consume, like, how are different ways to learn. Ever seen Pip Decks? Love those things too. So, but these are the kind of things from an education, maybe not just talking about education as in secondary, post-secondary, elementary, but more of like, hey, but how about adult education? How are we looking at educating as we go through our careers and beyond, even through retirement? And my dad was like, hey, I want to learn something new. I'm like, you now have the power in your hands to not stagnate, to continue to learn, to consume all that knowledge in a way that, gets you interested and excited every day.
Jimmy,
yeah. I wanted to just slightly move to a separate topic, or just expand on what we've already talked about, is not so much in the classroom, but the education system as a whole, right? We've kind of talked about that as like we're going to see some, we need some quick adaptations. We need to restructure some things, focus on what the key points are. And that example that Brian mentioned about that one teacher creating her lesson plan all around critical thinking and how to analyze, whatever the particular subject was. That's fantastic. And I really encourage her, if she isn't already, using platforms like whatever LMS is for her school, or whatever she's tied into, like Blackboard, Schoology, or anything like that, but also use like Teachers Pay Teachers. I've worked with them just a little bit on the fringe, but they're an excellent platform on other teachers creating materials so that other teachers can take advantage of it, so that we can have that dissemination of that information. So there's more of an opportunity to where we can get more of that educational equality there.
So I want to mention another tool that's related to what you're talking about, Junmi, which is Juji. Juji.io, I think, is the extension. You got to know whether it's SO or IO or AI. Maybe it's Juji.ai. I'm not sure. Somebody check that out. But Juji has gotten traction with a number of major universities, and it offers a tool that's no code to the instructors and professors that allows them to create chatbots, basically, that are they describe it as cognitive AI assistance, and it's quite impressive. It's been around much longer than these others that are emerging, and is actually a complete system that can be used in the educational academic environment.
What is it powered by? GPT?
I don't know.
That's a good question. That's another one.
It was available before Chat GPT came out, so and it was conversational. So, but it's probably driven by an OpenAI earlier model. I don't know.
I want to make sure I share some of the ones that we've mentioned. I mean, Carl, you mentioned learning or learn.xyz or Z.
Yep,
but I'm going to say Z. So we can use that for another topic for another day, but it's probably Z. I know. Aaron was going to come back on that too. But this is one we talked about. Bloom or chat.bloom.ai is what Andy was referring to. Andy, you've also mentioned, and Robert, you were talking about, and I agree with you, Khanmigo. If you have not played around with that, you have to make a donation in order to do it. If you are definitely a homeschooling parent / teacher or just teacher, I highly recommend going in and playing around with this. You may even be able to get free access. I'm not quite sure how that all works out.
Yeah, that's from Khan Academy, which is like they've
been doing this forever.
They're the OG for teaching through media.
20 years ago, I was watching his videos on how to do Excel, and he would just write it, and he would have videos on it. I loved Khan Academy back in the day.
If you get a chance, go look at his TED Talk. The guy Khan, I can't remember his first name, but the founder,
Salman Khan.
Yeah, go watch his TED Talk about Khanmigo. It's like from 5-6 months ago. And also, I want to mention Synthesis. I worked for Synthesis for a good long time, but I was doing it more where we would have Zoom calls. I would have children anywhere from the age of 9 to 15, but broken up into age groups. And we taught critical thinking skills through games. Since then, Synthesis has come out also with this particular topic. Now, you can see here, I'm in as a parent, but I can switch back to Sophia if I want to, my daughter. But I'm in Polaris, so if I want to explore mode. But they're all similar to this, but this is really, really cool stuff like this. So count like an Egyptian, right?
That's fun.
Yeah, I think one thing about using AI for education, I think a couple of you guys already touched on it, but I think one of the really powerful things that it will bring to the fore is the ability to tailor everyone's learning style, or tailor the educational process to everyone's learning style. Because
absolutely,
I know, like my niece is a teacher, and she's a very progressive teacher, and the school she works for is very progressive. So they do a lot of stuff that when I went to school, we never did. And then it's all designed to help students who learn differently get the best experience. And with an AI, I think you really, as it gets better, it's really going to be the kind of thing that will, I believe, ensure that everybody, even though we ideally want them all at school interacting and learning social skills and that sort of stuff, but when you can have that learning experience tailored to your specific strengths and weaknesses, I think it will make it a really interesting experience in the long term.
It'll be truly no child left behind at that point. It'll be truly like every kid will be addressed based on their aptitude or their ability. And maybe we'll get rid of people that are left behind because they didn't know they were dyslexic, or you didn't know that, because you'll be able to tell this person's not good. I'd love that idea.
Listen, equity, again, Evan Erberg talks about it all about equity. His goal is equity for 1 million students through what he's doing through proximity learning. But again, Amanda Bickerstaff is talking about equity. And I know it's coming up here a lot. And I think that's exactly right. If AI can help solve the problem of which children and college students and all across the board get what level of education simply because of their socioeconomic backgrounds or where they happen to be born or whatever the case is, there is a lot of hope for the future. I agree with, there's lots to go on here. We didn't even get into the ethics and all the other stuff, and we can do that on another show. But obviously there's a lot to unpack here. I'm looking forward to, us, starting up with our interviews, which we're going to do outside of this realm, just so we can always keep this to a tight 30 minutes. It'd be hard to bring on guests in this format, but we absolutely all are talking about bringing on guests. So look forward to that. And that'll be a great opportunity for us to bring in these experts, the Amandas and other people who are already in these fields, so we can learn from them as well. So we're over by 5 minutes. I'm not surprised on this particular one, but that's okay. It's a 35-minute show today. Come on back tomorrow, guys. We got a show tomorrow. I'm also really excited about. It's talking about the AITs, why businesses don't commit to AI even after they say they're going to. So that's going to be a good episode for tomorrow. And then on Monday, we're going to be, we keep saying it's Beth's show because it's all about her expertise in Salesforce, which I'm super looking forward to because I'm going to learn a lot on that one. So that's what we got coming up for the next 2 ones. And of course, we'll be back all next week as well. So until then, until tomorrow, this was fun. I enjoyed it. And let's do it again.
Bye, everybody.